College football playoff projections. Is Tennessee on the outside looking in after loss to Georgia? Georgia's dominant win over Tennessee on Saturday has really shaken things up in the college football playoff race. The Bulldogs now have wins over both the Vols and Texas, but they've also dropped games to Ole Miss and Alabama. Meanwhile, Ole Miss, who beat Georgia, has losses to LSU and Kentucky. And speaking of Alabama, they've somehow managed losses to Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Yep, it's a wild world at the top of the SEC right now. With Missouri and LSU officially out of the playoff picture after their losses, we're left with 6 SEC teams still in the hunt. And trying to predict where the committee will place them, well, let's just say it's like solving a math equation with a bunch of unknowns. Good luck with that. But here's our best guess at how the playoff rankings will shape up this Tuesday. And who knows, maybe we'll get a surprise appearance from Boise State and BYU in the mix. First round byes. 1. Oregon, 11-0. Projected Big Ten champion. The Ducks stay perched at the top spot after a nail-biting win over Wisconsin. That fake field goal call by Dan Lanning might have been the most second-guessed play of the season. But it worked out when Mateo Uiagalelei came through with a clutch interception to seal the win. Now Oregon heads into their Week 13 bye looking as strong as ever. 2. Texas, 9-1. Projected SEC champion. The Longhorns had a brief scare against Arkansas, but a clutch touchdown drive quickly put that to bed. That said, Quinn Ewers needs to get the passing game humming. 176 yards against the Razorbacks just won't cut it in a potential playoff game. Texas has Kentucky up next in Week 13. 3. Miami, 9-1. Projected ACC champion. With a week off, Miami should see a nice bump in the rankings, especially after Tennessee's loss. The Hurricanes are looking good to reach the ACC title game. And they hold the tiebreaker over Clemson thanks to their win over Louisville. A couple more wins and they're cruising into playoff territory. 4. Boise State, 9-1. Projected Mountain West champion. Yes, you read that right. Boise State could find themselves in the top 4. We're still scratching our heads over BYU's bizarre ranking after a 22-21 win over Utah. And after BYU's loss to Kansas, we think the Broncos will leapfrog the Cougars, making them the new team to watch in the playoff hunt. First round matchups. Number 12 BYU, 9-1. Projected Big 12 champion, at number 5 Ohio State, 9-1. At large, BYU could very well be on the rise again if they pull out a win over Arizona State. But a loss here might drop them out of the Big 12 title game altogether. Ohio State, on the other hand, is cruising after a 21-point second-quarter explosion to put away Northwestern. The Buckeyes should stay firmly at number 2 in the rankings for now. Number 11 Georgia, 8-2. At large, at number 6 Penn State, 9-1. At large, Georgia's back in the playoff picture after their big win over Tennessee. They should be ranked above the Vols and Ole Miss, and with their playoff hopes alive. It's looking like Georgia will be a tough out. Penn State, who had a blowout win over Purdue, will be a solid test in what promises to be a tight matchup. Number 10 Ole Miss, 8-2. At large, at number 7 Indiana, 10-0. At large, both teams had a week off, but Ole Miss moves up a spot after Tennessee's loss. Indiana is looking strong at 10-0 and has a huge showdown in Week 13 against Ohio State. A win for the Hoosiers would lock them into the Big Ten title game against Oregon. But a loss would mean they'll need Michigan to help them out by knocking off the Buckeyes. Number 9 Alabama, 8-2. At large, at number 8 Notre Dame, 9-1. At large, we know, Alabama lost to Tennessee earlier this season. But the committee might just give them a little recency bias after their win over Mercer and Tennessee's loss. With Ole Miss and Georgia in similar spots, Alabama could still sneak into the SEC title game with a 10-2 record. Notre Dame is looking strong at 9-1 and should stay in the playoff hunt. With Army coming up next in Week 13. What about Tennessee? After that crushing loss to Georgia, Tennessee's path to the playoff is looking a lot tougher. The Vols are still 10-2 if they take care of business against UTEP and Vanderbilt. But there's a strong chance they'll get edged out by teams like Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss. all of whom will likely finish with the same record or better. A 10-2 season might not cut it in a crowded SEC. And if Alabama sneaks into the SEC title game, Tennessee could find themselves on the outside looking in. The bottom line: the SEC is as wild as ever. And while Tennessee's loss to Georgia didn't completely end their playoff hopes, the Vols are going to need some help to stay in the race. Meanwhile, Oregon, Texas, and Miami are looking pretty comfortable. But don't be surprised if Boise State gets a surprise boost. With a lot of football left to be played, this playoff race is far from over.